Привет, I'm Chuck Olinik. I'm a Ukrainian-American, baptized with the name Yaroslav, which is the name I use in the historical reenactment group, the Society for Creative Anachronism. I've been researching Slavic and Eastern European, Ukrainian and Russian folklore for decades, I guess. And I decided that I wanted to share this information in order to foster an interest in folks in the society to develop an Eastern European persona. So I've been making videos of my research and putting them up on YouTube, on my YouTube channel. And lately I've gotten into this thing. I stumbled into the idea of writing on birch bark, as was done in medieval Novgorod, and that was quite by accident. Honestly, I was looking to buy a rug with a map of the Hyborian age of Robert E. Howard's Conan the Barbarian, because that would go with a map that I have of Middle Earth that's in my office here, and there's a map rug of the city of Lankmar. So I figured, all right, let's just kind of keep these fantasy things going. What I found instead was a map for sale, and it was wood burned on birch bark. And that triggered a memory about documents being kept on the bark of birch trees in medieval Russia, especially in the Novgorod area. That led to finding out there's an entire field of study about writing on birch bark. In Russian, I believe it's Ramoti na Bereste. I know Bereza is birch. And that the waterlogged clay soil around Novgorod contained not just artifacts of leather and wood, but over 1,200 documents discovered since 1951 that were written on the inner surface of the birch bark. Okay, why birch bark? Well, there were forests of birch trees surrounding Veliki Novgorod. Basically, that's Novgorod the Great, which was the capital of the Republic of Novgorod. And the bark was plentiful. Best part, it was free. I had to try this. Birch bark was available from Amazon after just a little poking around. There were rolls about 7 or 8 inches wide, which were too narrow for things that I was thinking of. There were like really small ones that were tags for gifts. That's too small. And there were 12-inch by 12-inch pieces. So I ordered them, and I had assumed they'd be shipped flat. I'd find out I was wrong. All right, let's see what I got. I have 4 12 by 12 pieces of birch bark, and I'm going to assume that's the side that I write on. I've been told that, or my research said, that you can write on the rough side, but people usually didn't do that. So that means tomorrow I begin the grand experiment. Okay, Houston, we have a little bit of a problem. Well, aside from stuff coming off, that's from the outside, this is curled and dried. That means I've got to try to find a way to straighten it. Oops, there's another issue. I was guesstimating when I worked this out. I was going to do a map of Caid, and I was also going to do a map of the western parts of the SCA. I was going to probably call it the areas of exploration for the Black Hats. Minor problem here. This is bigger than this. And this is bigger than this. The joys of experimental archaeology. Turns out the prototypes that I made, basically the sketches I was going to try to recreate on the Birchbark, are too large. So now I've got to go to Staples and get them reduced, so at least I can kind of wrap my brain around how I'm going to transfer the stuff to fit on the 12 by 12 pieces of birch bark. Oh, by the way, it's 100 degrees here in Pomona and I have no AC, so fortunately it's just a ride of a few miles. And these got reduced by about 70%, and that should fit pretty well on the pieces of birch bark that I use. Okay, and this is after 24 hours with some heavy books on top. We're going to end up running another experiment. Oh yeah, and there's all the crap from the other side showing up. So this is going to be kind of a messy experience until I get this stuff tamed. In the words of the Black Adder, I have a cunning plan. This used to be my stool. And then the part underneath it finally exploded after 40 plus years. I'm going to put it to use. Now here is one piece of birch bark. And you can see it's not curved as horribly as the others. That's because I had it sitting under some heavy books for about 24 hours. I'm going to basically put pressure on here by using this piece of leftover lumber so you never get rid of scrap lumber. And I'm going to put some books on top. Ooh, there's a squeaky noise. And I'm going to let this sit. Now, when I showed you the piece before I put the board on it, I ended up putting it under some heavy books for about 24 hours. So I'm going to let this sit for probably like another 24 hours, and then I'm going to run an experiment as far as getting the birch bark wet. A friend suggested that I use a spritz and iron, but we'll see. Maybe getting it damp enough might actually do the job. Maybe even using a sponge that's damp and then just applying the pressure. So we'll see if this works. Okay, it's been another 24 hours since I sandwiched the birch bark between two boards, so let's see how that's doing. Well, it may be marginally flatter, but looks like I'm going to have to try to get this wet and put it back between the boards so that I can flatten that out. Alright, I just ran that under the tap and back to being part of a sandwich. Good morning. Well, let's see how flat the birch bark has gotten overnight. And there's my jerry-rig system. I added some more weights. Probably should have used those first. Let's see what happens. Well, I strongly suspect that's about as flat as it is going to get. So that probably means that whatever I do on there is going to need to go into a frame to keep it permanently squashed. Okay, I think I can start writing on this, and I'm going to soak more pieces of birch bark and put them through this process. So here are my choices. Map of Caid, and you see how it fits there. Or western part of the known world. Okay, so how I'm going to actually put the design down on the birch bark. Whichever one I'm going to do. And I'm going to do this in both cases. In period, ink wasn't used to write on the birch bark. There was a type of stylus called a pisalo. And I don't see any pictures of a pisalo. I'm going to continue searching, but really what I'm going to have to do is probably either use an awl, or there was a suggestion of using a nail, but I'm thinking if I do it, I may as well try to make a pasalo by maybe attaching the nail, installing it in a dowel, or maybe, since I have like a million old pens around here, try to figure out how I can fix the nail in there. Or, I could just find a piece of rod and go to the grinder and try to make one. But we'll see what I can do there. But what I'm first going to do is I'm going to do this in pencil. All right, I have my magic set of, a million pencils. And then I'm going to either, there's going to be two versions of the maps done. One is going to be scratched in. We'll see how that works, because I don't know. I'm kind of flying blind. All I'm doing is using material from sources, and I've never seen anybody do this before. And quite frankly, I don't want to look it up on, look for anything on YouTube, because I want to figure out how to do it. And the other version that I'm going to do is I'm going to probably use ink. I may just go with black ink because I got a million of these. Or I may do something in color. But I want to have the contrast between, here's the stuff that's scratched in that is more authentic, and then here's something for our 21st century eye to be able to say, hey, look, there's writing there. So we'll see. So I'm going to get started on at least doing penciling of the map today. But first, breakfast. All right, I made a little more progress. The map of Caid, drawn on here in pencil on both of the pieces of birch bark. One of them is going to get carved with a stylus, a pisalo, except I've never seen a pisalo before, so I may be using an awl, or I may be trying to create one in the garage. And the other is going to get ink. So that way 21st century eyes can kind of wrap their brains around what they're seeing. So this is the version of the map of Caid on birch bark done with ink. So, basically my brain could get wrapped around what I'm working on and what I'm seeing. Next comes carving away at it with implements. So that'll be on the other map. And I should be using what's a stylus called a pisalo, but I don't have one. I have not seen pictures of one. So I'm going to count on using one of these two awls to try to produce the effect. What I'm going to try first is on the inked version, I'm going to scrawl my name in, and we'll see how that goes, and then I'll ink over it. Okay, I used the bigger awl, and it took a while, but that's how it looks. So, Yaroslav, or as a number of my friends from the old days used to pronounce it, pro crab. Okay, let's wrap this up. By the way, I'm wearing my experimental archaeology shirt. I thought that was kind of important to do. Now, that's the one that is simply scratched in. So this is the birch bark that has been worked pretty authentically. Remember, adding the ink, it wasn't a period thing. I did discover some difficulties. I was using these two awls, and I discovered this one worked better, but I noticed there's more of a problem in working on the birch bark. Because what do you do when you write with a pencil or a pen? You tend to move forward. I found I had to drag and go in the opposite direction, which means making certain letters would probably be kind of weird. Drawing, I get, yeah, okay, just gonna move it in a different direction, but writing, you're used to going forward. So, okay, that was a thing. I also decided that I was going to add, besides my name, I was going to add what year it is, Anno Societatis. Okay, it's 59, right? Licks. Big problem. The Russians and the Rus, they did not use Arabic numerals. They used basically other characters. And, oops, I forgot a part here. There is a little thing that goes across here. And it's called a titlo. And a titlo is basically something that indicates a number. All right, so this one's 50. That's 9. You're noticing that, or you should notice, there is no space after my name. That just follows across. That's what they did. All right, so that adds to the confusion of trying to translate things. All right, I'm going to go ahead and finish this off. Okay, so the ink version, all right, it's done. And the more period, authentic version is done, scratched in with an awl instead of a pisalo, because I didn't have a pisalo. I have 2 other pieces of birch bark that are being straightened out, and those are going to become other maps. But I'm not going to put that in the video, because the whole purpose of the video was to show you how I was trying to figure out how to write on birch bark in a period manner and try to recreate the process and show you my mistakes along the way. And I think I've pretty much done that. So until the next time, do pobачення.